Hey, everybody, welcome to That Expert Show, where you help run the show. I'm Anna Canzano, and tonight we're talking about disaster planning. For example, if your house burned down tomorrow, God forbid that happen, but would you have the tools to rebuild your life? What if it wasn't a fire? What if it was a flood, or a mudslide, or a hurricane, or an earthquake, or tornado? Well, there are things that you can do right now that can make a world of difference after a catastrophe like that in rebuilding. And our guest tonight is an attorney who is an expert in estate planning and small business law. She also works with the nonprofit Farm Commons, which helps sustainable farmers build legally resilient businesses. And we're going to talk with her about some legal resilience for you and your family tonight. Joining us live from Ashland, Oregon is Sarah Vaile with Siskiyou Law. Sarah, thanks so much for being on That Expert Show.
Hi, Anna. Thanks for having me here.
I love the work that you do because it's so important. I know this isn't the most exciting topic, but it is so vital for people to know these things before disaster strikes. So as we talk about the different things that can happen, that would be either natural disasters, man-made disasters, whatever it might be that would affect someone's home, what are the top things that come to your mind in terms of what people should do right now, like go out and do it tomorrow so that they can prepare themselves?
Yeah. Well, when I think about disaster recovery, I think about it in 3 phases, and one is really seeking refuge. So that's going to be getting your go bag together, having an emergency plan. That's going to be signing up for emergency alerts, whether by text or email. And it's getting your home ready through home hardening or defensible space around your home. So those are your immediate needs. And then once you seek disaster, the second phase, once you seek refuge from the disaster, the second phase is going to be recouping from your losses. And that's really what I want to focus on tonight. So that's going to be insurance claims. That's going to be applying to FEMA for financial assistance. And then the third phase is rebuilding your life. So repairing your home, maybe rebuilding, maybe moving. So what you can do right now for phase 2, recouping from all of your losses you might face, get insurance. So I say this all the time in my other work with Farm Commons. We're constantly telling our farm business owners, make sure you have insurance. So if you're fortunate enough to be able to afford insurance premiums, go out and get insurance. If you have your insurance, review it, make sure you have the right kinds of insurance, that it's covering what you need it to cover. Make sure you have limits that are high enough, and consider updating it. One thing you might want to look into, if you're a renter, explore renter's insurance. So a lot of people don't know that that's even available if you're a renter, but if you have renter's insurance, it will cover you for the loss of all the things that are in your home. So all of your personal property, all the important things in your rental. And it might also cover you for things like staying at a hotel if you had to evacuate, buying food if you had to evacuate, all the other expenses that come up. Those are usually covered in a homeowner's insurance policy, but again, most people don't know that renter's insurance has that too. So another really important thing that you can do right now is inventory everything that's in your home or in your business. So lots of problems that I've seen come up with insurance. People go to make a claim and their insurance company wants to see a list of everything that's in their home. If you're unable to provide that list, if you're unable to tell them item by item what is in your home, they might not give you what's up to the policy limits. So really important. Take your phone, go take a video, inventory the kitchen cupboards, cabinets, closets, down to light bulbs and pens. All that stuff really matters. And the last thing, documentation. Safeguard your identification, your legal documents, your financial documents, all of those things, and the loss of all those things caused so many problems for people after the wildfires we experienced last September. That's the reason why so many people had problems getting insurance claims.
That is so hard. Now, I want to dive deeper into each of the things that you've just said. I mean, I feel like I could do a whole nother segment on insurance because I find insurance really confusing sometimes. And, the last thing that anybody wants to do is overpay for insurance that they don't need. Do you find that a lot of people don't have the proper insurance after a disaster to help cover their damage, their losses?
Yeah, it's unfortunate it happens so much. It's been so common in what I've seen around here. In fact, as part of the Oregon State Bar pro bono panel that I have been on and still am on, I'm helping clients for free that were impacted by the wildfire. And I had one client who lost everything, his mobile home. There were 22 or so parks that were destroyed, mobile home parks. His was one of them. So he lost not only his home and the contents of his home, but also his vehicles and his work vehicle and the trailer and all of his landscaping tools and equipment completely gone. So not only did he lose his home, but he also lost his livelihood. So he was under the impression that he had auto insurance. And so when he went to go make a claim with his auto insurance provider, he was very sad to learn that those tools, the equipment, the trailer was not covered.
That is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You mentioned as well. I remember. Obviously, we had devastating wildfires here throughout the region this last fall that impacted so many people. Most of us, fortunately, did not have to evacuate our homes, but were in just sort of get ready mode. I remember being one of those people going around the house and taking video of different things that might be of value. How extensive does that documentation have to be? Because I've heard various things. I've heard like you really should have serial numbers written down for things that are of high value. How much proof does an insurance company need when you're trying to file that claim?
The more the better. And I'm not kidding when I say every pen, every light bulb. There is a really helpful spreadsheet I saw. I don't remember which insurance company had it off the top of my head. It might have been Nationwide or something like that. But I went looking for it when a friend of mine called up and said, I'm having a problem with my insurance. They want me to document everything that was in my home. Otherwise, they'll only pay me about 75% of my policy limit and not the whole thing. So I went and looked at this spreadsheet and it literally had light bulbs, pens, the tiniest little things in the home. So I don't know, I'm guessing the more the better, and all those little details are going to be really helpful. That came directly from an insurance provider, so I think that's what they're looking for. But there's some other help out there. I noticed that there are several apps that you can get to help you do a home inventory. So I think if you do a little Googling, you can find out some more information about exactly what you need. But I know years ago, a friend of mine had a home fire, and she said after an insurance situation she had, when she got a new home, first thing she did was go around and take that video camera of the contents of every drawer and every cupboard. So I think, you know, based on what folks that have been through this experience say, the more details, the better.
I think it's a good time to mention that the Oregon State Bar is actually helping people who live in wildfire disaster zones with free legal help. I think it's an amazing service that's being offered by attorneys across the state. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know you're involved in that as well.
Sure. Yeah, so the Oregon State Bar is in partnership with Oregon Legal Aid Services and FEMA. I think the Red Cross. They all have a partnership to provide free legal services. So if you are located in one of the 8 counties that has been declared a federal disaster, and I know that's my county, Jackson, that's I think Clackamas, Marion, Lane, so many. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but if you're in any one of those counties, you can call up the hotline, which is 1-800-452-7637. You can also visit the website, which is OregonDisasterLegalServices.org. And there you can get lots of information about all kinds of legal issues related to the disaster, and you can also get this free legal help.
And we will make sure to include all of this information in the tip sheet that we create after the show, and we'll post it on thatexpertshow.com and put it out on the socials so people can find that information easily. The third thing that you were talking about, you talked about documentation. You talked about, just in general being prepared with, insuring the property that you care about. And then I think you also talked about maintaining a safe place for the documents to prove your identity. This sounds so simple, but it's like if you are forced to leave your home in the midst of an emergency and something catastrophic happens to your home, let's say you don't have the ability to go back in and recover certain things, it can be really hard to prove in a very basic sense who you are to the agencies that you're requesting help from.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been the number one problem that people experiencing disaster recovery have faced. So if you're applying for Fema assistance, for example, if you're looking for direct financial assistance for the contents of your home and for your home repairing and rebuilding, someone in your home needs to be a citizen. So that means that you're going to have to provide that proof. You're going to have a passport, a social security number, something showing that you are in fact a U.S. citizen. So that sure didn't happen for a lot of people. So, sometimes that information can be recoverable. You can call the Social Security Administration, you can get in touch with these agencies, but that really takes time. So, really important to have all that documentation, not only just to prove your identity, but also to prove loss. So you're going to have to come up with financial records, W-2s, tax returns, bank account information. All of that is going to be so important. So there's something really useful that I found at ready.gov, and that's such an important and helpful website that I discovered through this process. So many checklists on there for disaster readiness. One of them is something called a financial emergency financial first aid kit. And that is a really powerful tool. It's a very comprehensive guide, including templates and checklists, and it tells you what information you want to take with you in person, you want to have in your go bag, you want to have printed copies of. It tells you what information you can get away with having just digitally, for example. So very, very helpful. There's also information on there, videos and other shorter guides that you can read with a lot of tips on what documentation you need to have.
That is great advice because, most of us don't have a go bag. Most of us, some of us might have like a fireproof safe where you keep a lot of this documentation. But most homes have a first aid kit, like a physical first aid kit. Why wouldn't we have one to cover other aspects of our livelihood that are so necessary to have after something like that is happening? I want to thank folks who are joining us live right now that are submitting questions that I wanted to field to you, Sarah. Chad is asking on Facebook, in emergencies, do FEMA funds supersede insurance, or do those funds come in addition to whatever your insurance might cover?
That's a great question, Chad. Yeah, so FEMA assistance will usually supplement what private insurance can offer. So FEMA is really useful for people who don't have any insurance coverage at all, but it's really a lifeline for them. But for people who do have private insurance, sometimes they don't have enough to cover everything, and that's where they can still apply to FEMA for additional coverage.
Interesting. Okay. And, if you want to talk a little bit about working through FEMA, like I remember vividly multiple stories that I did as a reporter for the ABC affiliate here in Portland, interviewing flood victims, months, years even after the fact, in trying to meander through the long, windy process that is dealing with a federal agency and providing, the paperwork and realizing, oh my gosh, I lived in a flood zone, therefore I may not be getting the assistance that I think I should be getting. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that whole process and, making your way through the red tape that's involved?
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely red tape, and I think that's why there is this panel, this attorney assistance panel and hotline, because it can be very challenging to walk through all of this red tape, and that can be very useful to have somebody to guide you. And it can also be very useful when FEMA turns you down. So, like so many of these agencies and government processes, oftentimes the answer is no the first time around, but that's not the end of the story. So a place where attorneys are very useful is in walking people through the appeal process for their FEMA denials. So often what will happen is you initially make that application, it comes back, you're either outright denied or you didn't get as much as you thought you should get. Maybe there was some documentation that you didn't provide. I had one client whose name was left off the FEMA application, and so he missed out on all kinds of benefits, including relocation assistance. And so in the appeal process, we submitted additional documentation proving his ownership. So it meant finding the deed to the property and proving that, yes, in fact, his name was on there, and submitting that to FEMA along with some other documentation. So they say the turnaround time is about 60 days for a decision on anything. So, and those first applications were due November 30th, but FEMA is still on a case-by-case basis accepting appeals. But it takes time.
Yeah, and a lot of patience, and I'm sure, having an attorney working alongside you would certainly help. You mentioned titles and deeds and things like that. I wonder, when it comes to, it sounds so basic, but the ownership of your home, are there things that you can do right now so that you go into any sort of unforeseen circumstance with your eyes wide open with what you actually own and what you might actually receive in assistance after something terrible happens?
Yeah, I mean, such a great question. And this goes to one of my things you can do right now, tips, which is investigate your title. So I also had another client who fortunately had insurance for her mobile home and received a check to cover the loss of her mobile home. But the check was written out to like 5 different people, and 3 of them she didn't even know. So this was a long, convoluted story steeped in all kinds of family drama. But the point is, she wasn't able to cash that check with all of these people on the check, some of which aren't even alive anymore, some of which live in different states. So you run into all kinds of complicated situations. And she had no idea that that was the state of her title until this happened. So yes, investigate the status of your title. If you own your home, go to the county you live in, go to the property records. Oftentimes you can search your deed online, you can do a title search. And if you own a mobile home, there's a different website that you can go to, which is, I think, the Building Codes Division of Oregon. And there you can also search online and put in your property information, and it will show up. You'll know then and there if you alone own your home or if somebody else may have ownership as well. Maybe you have a tax lien. All kinds of unexpected things can happen.
Yeah, that would be
And
quite a surprise. Does that only apply to real estate and property, or does it apply to any other kind of asset?
it could apply to other assets as well. I imagine, yeah, vehicles can be owned jointly several ways. So can anything that can have a title, equipment, sometimes farm equipment might be owned by several people. It's yeah, that's not uncommon either.
Interesting. Anything else that comes to mind that people can do right now? You've worked with obviously people that have uh, dealt with disaster in their lives and are trying to repair, rebuild. What are other common mistakes that you've seen that you can account for now in advance?
Yeah, so the phase 3, rebuilding, repairing, getting your life back together, has its own set of legal challenges. So the two issues that come up is scams and also contract issues when you're rebuilding your home and you hire contractors. So regarding scams, there sadly are lots of people out there ready and willing to take advantage of other people's hardships. And so a lot of things that have happened are people coming door to door, posing as FEMA inspectors, for example. They're asking for payment, they're asking for bank account information. FEMA does not ask for payment, so that is a scam. There have also been people posing as contractors, or maybe they were contractors, but their license has expired because they started a job, didn't finish it, but took the money and ran. So there's actually a very helpful website out there. The Oregon Construction Contractors Board has a buyers beware page that has information about people whose contractors' licenses have expired because they've taken money and left the job because they have fines, didn't follow regulations, and their license was taken. So that's, that those are some scams that people need to be aware of. So I think one thing you can really do is educate yourself. Right now, you can go to the Attorney General's website and they have all kinds of helpful information about scams on there, scams related to disaster recovery. And so, very useful place to go. And also educate yourself about working with contractors. So, uh, these relationships can break down if you don't have all of the terms outlined in the contracts, especially over, payment, schedules, quality of materials. So, even the very best contractors out there may be extremely busy because everybody's getting a new house in town because everybody's house burned down. So, problems can happen, even working with the best of people. If there are misunderstandings about when it's going to get done, how much it's going to cost, and things are expensive right now. Materials are more expensive than they have been in a long time, partly because of COVID, partly because of the disasters we're facing. There's just so much demand out there that prices are really high. So just get some helpful education about how to work well with contractors and come up with good agreements that work for everyone.
Well, and does it go without saying that you shouldn't be paying a contractor up front an exorbitant amount of money before any work is done? Because I've heard different things about how it goes with contractors, and some contractors will say, well, I need you to provide the money for the materials because I'm not going to dig into my pocket to buy the materials before the work is done. What do you advise people when it comes to things like that?
I would say don't pay cash for one thing, and pay no more than 10% of the full contract price up front. Oftentimes it's a third, a third, a third, but a big piece of advice is, don't let the money get ahead of the work. So have it be, lined up with each other. So,
And you're saying as little as 10%.
yes, I'm no expert in contract law, but that's the advice that I've seen out there. Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing that's worth mentioning, I guess, is don't do work with a contractor that is not licensed and bonded.
Absolutely. Yep. And you can check that at the Oregon Construction Contractors Board. So, helpful piece of advice when you're meeting with a contractor, and do get referrals from friends and family, local people, and find out their license number, take a copy of that, and plug that into the website and find out if that license is still good.
How easy is it for a contractor who's had a shoddy record to shut down operations and then crop up as someone doing business as someone else, as a different entity? So they have a new number, a new CCB number that doesn't really reflect what they did in the past.
Ooh, I don't know. That's a tricky one. I haven't thought about that before.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe go to the Oregon Construction Contractors Board website. There might just find that answer there.
Yeah. I think it's worth noting that, contractors are given a lot of opportunities to make good if they've had interactions with clients, customers that were not favorable. Just in personal experience, and again, from experience as a reporter and stories that I've done, the Contractors Board wants to work with contractors to give them multiple opportunities to not have disciplinary action taken against them. And if a contractor actually winds up having disciplinary action, or at the extreme gets their license taken away, it's really bad.
Yeah. I think that's true.
Yeah. Anything else that you want to leave us with? Thank you so much for everything that you've shared. Just some last thoughts for folks as they, prepare to hopefully go down this list of to-dos.
I would say insurance. Just get it, update it, review it. All the I's. Insurance, inventory your house, get your identification and financial documents together, and investigate title.
Those are all I terms. One last thing, Chris is writing in on Facebook and says, how do I get my kids to take me seriously when I tell them we have to leave in a hurry? If there were a disaster, we'd certainly be in trouble. Any advice for Chris?
Yeah, Chris, I would say go to ready.gov. There's a great checklist there for creating an emergency plan, and one of them is for kids. There's one specifically created for kids. So there's a communication plan, there's an evacuation plan, there's a plan for families and kids. Where do we meet up if we don't have a way to communicate with each other? Kids might not have cell phones, for example. I'd start there.
That's great. And maybe do some drills. I mean, honestly, when you talk to first responders, they always say, don't let the first time you're trying to get out of the house in an emergency be the time that it's actually happening. Have those drills. Your kids do all kinds of drills at school. Why not do that at home as well?
I was thinking the same thing just last night. I was looking up earthquake drills, earthquake preparedness. And one thing I saw was what to do in case of an earthquake. You get under a table, and I didn't even know that. I thought you get under a doorway, and that's apparently old news. So I was thinking, oh, my kids used to do this when they were in school, and now they don't. So I guess we should start doing this at home.
Exactly. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us on That Expert Show. Again, we're going to summarize the information that you've shared and provide the links in a tip sheet that we'll post after the show.
Great. You're welcome, Anna.
And thank you for joining me for this episode of That Expert Show. I really hope this was helpful to you. I know it was a lot to kind of absorb, and it's a lot of things to try to do for yourself or for your family, but I hope you found it worthwhile. Again, we'll post that tip sheet on thatexpertshow.com. We'll also put this episode out on our YouTube channel, That Expert Show, and you can listen to us as a podcast as well. If you want to share that with your friends, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere it is that you listen to content. And hey, this is a two-way conversation. I love the questions that you submit. I love your ideas for topics and guests that you want me to go after. So send me a message on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just look for Anna Canzano. I love hearing from you. The show is better for it. It really is based on your input. You help run the show. And so we're here on Mondays at 7 o'clock Pacific time. Thanks for being on That Expert Show, where you help run the show.